Yes. No, what happened was I looked at all of the audition tapes and I said, well, it has to be Craig and Ryan. Like, those are the two people. And he didn't tell me who he'd selected, right? And so it was just amazing that your audition tapes really kind of popped out of the screen. But there's quite a journey to go from doing an audition tape in Los Angeles or Heidelberg or wherever you were, and then coming together and making that relationship work on screen. And it does work incredibly beautifully. How did you do that?
I fell in love with Ryan. I mean, look at it. No, I mean, I think you have to. People scrutinise audiences. People scrutinise performances so much these days that you really can't do anything but experience what you're experiencing. And we hung out as a couple, and I kind of had to remind myself that it was a film because I was getting a little bit too attached.
But this is the format to do it. Craig got
so angry at me. I dared to suggest that I was going on a date.
At the very end of the shoot.
And I think we had like 3 days where you wouldn't talk to me or something like that. We've got that much chemistry with each other. Craig said from the very start, I think the only place to go with this is absolute truth. And I think if you look at this film now, a collection of everyone's idea that we can gather of who these boys were, it's an example of honesty. It's honesty, and we decided there was no other place to go but honesty, so we had to develop that relationship.
We were in rehearsal one day, and I was kind of trepidatious about physical affection. And I just kind of said to him out front, I was like, do you want to just kind of just go for it? And he's like, fuck yeah, let's just do it. So like, from that point on, we were just like over each other, like rapid.
The audition was, okay, so it's time to
take your clothes off now?
This is in London.
In a room, fucking casting. And I started to bite Craig's nipple, because we were doing that scene. And Craig turned to me and said, you're gonna bite my nipple. I said, I'm biting your nipple. You're gonna fucking bite it off. And that's basically a metaphor for the way
the shoot went
entirely with Craig in terms of commitment levels. I bit that fucking nipple.
What was interesting was that we yeah, it did. Yeah. But I mean, the other guy that was reading, I shouldn't say this, but fuck it. He was trying to assert his heterosexuality as soon as he walked in the room. So he was like, oh yeah, I'm ready for this. My girlfriend's fucking talking against him, so we can't get any of you, mate. I'm not gay, or I'm not, but and Orion came in and he was just like, right babe, what are we doing? Just like grabbed me and like we were cuddling, canoodling on the couch, and it was just like
biting nipples.
It's just being completely available. I think that's what we needed to be. So
yeah, and there's a bit of separation anxiety on sensing.
Oh yeah, always.
Okay.
Anxiety in general. But Craigie sort of said, from the very start of the audition process, there were so many of them, and we'd all done these characters with so many different partners and got to know the scenes so well, and sort of drawn from the book. But by the time we got to audition with each other, I think we both sort of agreed. We both came down afterwards and said, I hope you get it. So I hope you do too. And that was because we really wanted to work with the dynamic we just found. We looked up and we saw each other.
Yeah, Ryan was like, I just come from living in LA for 5 years, and you're working with like actors. So like to actually sit in a room with Ryan where he was just completely available. No, I'm being dead serious. It was so refreshing. And I think that's the quality that
we're still dating now.
Yeah, it's
great. Fortunately for you two, you didn't have to live through the incredibly traumatic and dreadful years of this epidemic, where there was fear and shame on a daily basis and grief, really numbing grief. I'm just curious to know how you got into that space as actors, because you needed to go there.
Yeah, you were instrumental in that. I think I had a great book called Under the Red Ribbon, or Behind the Red Ribbon, and that was great in terms of understanding what was happening socially in Australia. And Edwina Wright was fabulous. She was so amazing. She was a doctor, and she worked at Utah.
Okay, so I guess many people and colleagues and friends are here in the audience, so hello, and many of you knew Fairfield Hospital either as visitors or patients or family, and that's where I started in 1990 as a young registrar in infectious diseases, and they were the halls and the rooms and the doorways of a lot of suffering, but incredible bravery, and also, as you say, being real, because by that time in people's lives there was no time to not be real and not be authentic. It was just a waste of time to be otherwise. So that was very apparent, that I could see that you did very successfully reach that, as you said. But yeah, I think I'd be interested to hear your answer to Colin's question. How did you get there?
Well, Edwina would, particularly learning what happens sort of physiologically to the body when it's being ravaged by lymphoma or PCP, understanding where you feel pain, what sort of medication you're on. But I mean, the biggest thing, you can't prepare yourself for it, because nothing could prepare anybody for it, whether you're living it or not. I think what struck me the most is a fabulous documentary called We Were There. It's about when ACE struck San Francisco, and this man lost two of his lovers, and everyone was sort of thinking, like, how do you do it? You're so heroic. How are you doing this? And he just said, I'm not a hero. I'm just trying to live. I'm just trying to live my life. And I think that from my perspective, not having lived it, I think that's what I gather from it. You're just trying to survive each day, and taking a plethora of medication and really having somebody there. I think that's the best medicine. So
We had all the resources at our disposal, and you were as you both were in helping us understanding the details of medications or the conditions that we were going through and the effect. But I think overwhelmingly, what's come out of after people have seen this film is that it means so much to so many people from that point of view. You have to try and gather all of those stories and find a middle ground somewhere to put this. And you can do that with the help of all the technical stuff, but I think it's about sort of finding it in your heart, and I think that's pretty good.
So I'm getting to know you through this process. I sort of I understand and get the sense very strongly that this, as jobbing actors, you go from job to job to job.
no, you don't.
Well, you don't. But I think what distinguishes this experience above anything else is, apart from the incredible subject matter and the fact that it's an iconic book and you carry that kind of legacy with you as performers, but I didn't want to let this evening go without mentioning Neil and how you worked with him, and what an extraordinary experience that is for any actor lucky enough to be cast in anything that he does.
Neil is just, he's the penultimate director. If I could just work with Ryan and Neil for the rest of my life, I'd be so happy. Neil's gorgeous, he's such a human being and so warm, and we were shooting a film on a TV schedule, which is madness. Most films shoot maybe 30 seconds of footage a day. We were shooting like 3 minutes. And to have somebody at the helm who was so calm and collected and so centered in all this madness, and people coming up to him like, "Oh, about this one, we're about to lose this location, we've got to have it," and he was just like, "Okay," and would then really just sit with the actors, or sit with us, and just made us feel wonderfully at ease.
We really got a theatre experience in this. The rehearsal process was probably a little longer than we normally get on the film, and it was Neil. It was quintessentially Neil. Great part about this project for both of us was the opportunity to work with Neil, and he's such a stickler for detail and so emotionally intelligent. And it seems, I don't think we've ever answered this question, with the weight that it's how was it working in Arfield. He gets to know you as a person, becomes your friend, realises what your strengths and weaknesses are as a performer and as a person, and sort of unifies those two things to get something organic. And I think he facilitates an environment in which you can explore that and do that and feel
love and warmth of the experience. I think that's pretty special.
And I think
Like I suffer from anxiety, and to have somebody that just won't move on unless they get it, you know, it just takes the fucking load off, you know. It's just someone that just is really, I don't know, just makes you feel like what you're doing is alright, you know, and that's very important for insecure actors.
And remind me when we get worried about the neuroses or the technical things that would come with it. Actually, he always came back and said, "It's about finding the essence of these two boys." And that sits within you and the dynamic that you do have. So trust in that. And I think directors like that don't come along very often. It's why he can make films like this and why he's chosen to have the responsibility of telling such heartfelt stories.
And Ed, you work closely with him, and often directors will consider the kind of detail that you would bring to it as being kind of important, but kind of superfluous once the cameras start rolling. But you have a good experience.
Yeah, it was his attention to detail was very compelling, but he's so subtle about it. So he'll engage you, and you'll be eating, and he'll share food with you, and you'll have a drink, and all the time he's taking these notes and gently insinuating questions that are going to be really important for the film, but also finding out about you at the same time. He's got this remarkable ability to just navigate everything. So
You've known him for years. What is that? What is?
Yeah.
I mean,
He'll spend a scene 45 minutes on the way a piece of salmon sits on a piece of cheese, and at the time you're like, but it's that. It's sort of it's that, isn't it?
I'd love to talk more and more, but I think these people are really keen to see the film. As I said to you when we first met at the Victorian AIDS Council all those months ago, in first world countries, we're never going to be faced with what people are faced with in this film ever again. But it should be remembered that in other countries that aren't so fortunate, people are still dying of AIDS, and it's still a very real issue. But I guess I've been fortunate enough to see this film twice. Tonight will be my third time, and I just want to thank both of you for reminding us so vividly and so with such heartfelt truth of that time.
Thank you.